All right. Thanks for being here today. We have Joy, who is the founder and CEO of Be the Difference Clothing. Thank you very much. I was looking at all the things you do, and I can only imagine that you got a lot of demands on your time. So thank you for calling in today and talking about creativity.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I love to talk about how we can all be creative and just doesn't matter where you start, you know what I mean? You just have to start.
Yeah, I like that. The I found out about you on the matchmaker.fm site that for podcasters and people on podcasts. And then I started following you on Instagram I'll put the link in the show notes, but the Be the Difference Clothing Instagram one. And I like
Hmm.
checking that. I don't know if I'd call it the least favorite thing about podcasting, but one of the things that I go, oh, I'm going to get lost. I'm going to lose a lot of time doing this part is posting the clips. And it's usually because you get lost in whatever social media thing you're doing. So I like being able to see what other people are doing that I follow. So one of the things is I see your stuff on there. So I like seeing that.
Thank you.
Your in your bio, you list poetry as one of your interests, and that was one of the first things when I was going through it because I like talking to writers and poets and things like that. So, what is your relationship or experience with poetry?
I'm a novice, but I do like, there was a point in time where I used to go to a weekly open mic and they had a lot of different, musical guests, and then there were some poets. And what was so interesting about poets, they think so deeply and they think in like so many different dimensions. You can take one word and make it mean so many other things. You can take one topic and make it relevant for past, present, and future. So I like the wordplay that they have. And I guess you can say I'm somewhat of a poet to a degree because of the context that are created from the designs and also from the books that I've written. I guess when I think of poetry, I always think of people who, do some like write some really, really deep, profound things. But poetry is whatever rhythm is coming out and how it can relate to people. And so, yeah, I guess I am a little bit of a poet. But it's intriguing to understand humanity and life. And poetry is one way you will definitely get in the nooks and crannies, and you can tell where people are, and what they're thinking just through their poems and what they speak, what area
Yeah.
of life they're in.
Is that what got you into doing a book on quotes?
No. So honestly, on Instagram, I was trying to build a platform and I had DM'd one of the, I guess, marketing people that were on Instagram at that time. And we were talking back and forth. And he said, you know what, honestly, right now with the algorithm, you need to put two quotes and a picture. And so I was like, okay, bet. But I don't want to use other people's quotes. I'm always leery of, using someone's quote and not referencing it properly and, potentially getting sued. So that's when all the original material came. It forced me to think differently. It forced me to think about things and to write them down. And when people started liking it and engagement started coming up, I was like, okay, this is cool. But the book idea never came until a year later. So, just a quick story, I was getting my hair done, and one of the women that were sitting there, we were watching a television show, and said, I want to see more African American women writing more so that younger girls coming up can see that you can be a writer as well as a good dancer or, an athlete or anything like that. So I said, I took that as a personal threat, you know, like, and a challenge. And I was
Mm.
like, well, I'm not an author. I don't know how to write, but I know I have a collection of quotes that I've been posting for a year. This is like 3 quotes a day because I couldn't find pictures. So I was putting 3 quotes a day. So put all of those collections together, I was able to come up with 5 books. So
Okay. When you published them, did you use Amazon to publish them, or did you go through a different type of publication process?
I did, because who wants to go through the process of uh, put owning your own rights and waiting for a publishing company to pick you up and decide whether they want to take your work. And then on top of that, meeting their requirements. I'm not traditional. So I said, you know what? Let me cut the middleman out, and everything that I did, and I wanted to put it out very quickly too, just to prove that I met the challenge in my head. And I always say is when you're supposed to be doing, everything just kind of falls into place. And it fell into place for me to get this book published. And that's what I found. I found Amazon and I went from there. And I've been using that ever since. So I go ahead, I copyright, then I publish, and then I print.
Yeah, I like the Amazon method of it. You haven't used any other type of publishing besides the Amazon, the KDP?
No, that's the only one. It's the easiest platform that I could find. I'm just like, look, if it's not broken, then don't try to fix it or make it any different. So I enjoy them.
Yeah, I like the Amazon platform. I used a self-publishing one for my first book, and it was a learning experience, but I didn't know about the Amazon KDP stuff back then, and I'm not sure how much it changed over that time between the first publication and then the second thing I did. But I found it when I was doing a sci-fi novella with another person, and I think I might have had a book before that too. And I just like the control you have over it, to where if you had some errors in whatever you wrote,
Mhm.
you could go in and change the manuscript easily, and you could set a price that was probably going to be lower than a publishing company was going to. Like the first book I did, I think it was around 19 or $20 for a soft cover, and I was like, nobody's going to pay for that for an unknown person. And then with Amazon, you can set it so much lower. I like that. And then the access to just the Kindle and the whole e-reader market. It,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy with Amazon,
And
and they seem like they
have
keep
you done the
updating
audio?
it.
ha- Have you done the audiobook version of them too?
I haven't done audio yet. What's your experience with that?
It's easy. It's just another sector. It's still Amazon, but it's just like their sister company. Um, and again, like I was running into trying to find a narrator. So I ended up just doing it myself. And I thought that was pretty cool because I was like, wow, now the reader hears my voice and it's like another piece of my legacy being in someone else's head. And they actually hear the actual voice. So
Yeah,
I figured out how to do that, and all of my books are now audiobooks.
nice. Unless you have somebody that, maybe if you had like a famous person or somebody with an excellent voice, then I could see using them. Like if you could get Morgan Freeman to read your book, why wouldn't you? But I think whoever writes something is probably going to know how to read it better than anyone else, or at least they're going to know how to read it to where it flows more. Other people might have a hard time picking up on the rhythm of it. Not to say a professional person that records, a voice recorder, couldn't do it, but I think the audience probably prefers the writer to read it if they can understand them at all. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's
so
that was pretty cool.
what books have you released then? Have you published on Amazon?
All of them. Every single last one of them. So I have quotes that make you say, oh, part one, three, four. And the last book that I published, self-published, was Self-Reflections, quotes that make you reflect. Um, from my heart to your hand, can you see now? So that's the last book. The second book, I didn't I published it. No, I copywrote it, but I did not publish it because I'm only making it available on clothing. So basically socks. So once I finish putting all of the quotes from that book on socks, I'm discontinuing it. And the reason why I did that is pretty stupid. But at the time, the follow-up book is always the hardest one. You have to trump whatever you did the first time. And when I was reading it, I was like, these don't hit as hard as the first book. But as I'm putting them on socks, I'm like, oh, this is good. This is good. This is good. And I'm like, dang, that's a missed opportunity. But I can't go back on my word because I would have lied to hundreds of people who own different parts of my part two book all over the world. And I'm just like, dang. But I
So
still have the computer version of it, but I put it into a book format because I promised I wouldn't.
how long does it take you to put together a book of quotes?
It's not long at all. I published, let's just say this, I published my first in October of 2018, then April of 2019, then like June of 2019 and 2020. Like it was all back to back because it was flowing so quickly.
Mm.
I was writing everything down. It just flowed. And then after self-reflections, it kind of just stopped. And I'm just like, well, I'm not going to force anything. I'm not going to force a quote. I'm not going to force, anything like that because it may lose its effectiveness. So I just stopped. I was like, ooh, having 7 books would be a perfect number. But I'm like, I don't really want to do that. So
Mm.
the desire of not wanting to do it and then also the flow of it not coming, it just kind of stopped at 5. Now,
Where do you think
I'm not, go ahead.
where do you think the flow was coming from? The
Oh, it was
inspiration for it?
everything, everything. The inspiration came from the things that I saw, personal experiences, um, stuff that happened just by seeing other people and how they reacted and how that might relate to even my podcast that I was doing on YouTube every day. Like quotes were flowing. I would be here sitting here talking, having a conversation on my talk show, and then all of a sudden a quote would come out. And I'm like, oh, somebody write that down because I'm gonna forget it. And I said, don't you steal it either. So like quotes would come from there. And quotes would come when I'm driving. So I'm over here with a pen and like I have a picture of quotes. I have a picture of like 5 quotes that I put on a cup. And I'm like driving. I'm like, oh, girl, you better write this down because you're
Mm.
gonna forget it that quickly. So I have and I took a picture of it, and the cup was just like all the way around. And then sometimes I'll find scrap paper, napkins, whatever's in the car. So that's when I was writing a lot of stuff. I know it was dangerous, but I tried to wait till I got to a stoplight.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was a lot of that and then stuff I would put in my phone, but it just came just like that. But that's why I recommend anybody, like if you have ideas or thoughts, write it down because it might just be for that moment. And if you don't write it down, you'll miss your moment.
Yeah,
And
I always say that's the difference between a writer and not a writer is you wrote it down. That everybody is open to wherever that the energy or inspiration comes from. Like you hear something, or even in visual arts, if you see something, it, and you're like, whoa, that'd be a good picture, or that sounds good. I like the message. I like the tone of it. Sometimes things sound better than the messages are, and then other times the reverse, and then sometimes it's both at the same time. But
mhm,
I wrote a poem one time. It's in one of the poetry books called "I'll Talk in Your Words," and it was basically conversations I had with people, and I would, when I'm just listening, I would write down things that we said in the conversation, and then at the end of whatever the period of time was, I would put all those together, and then you have a poem. And I think that's part of the magic of poetry. It's sure, I think poetry comes from within you. You've manifested yourself through your experience and what you see and what you think about. But it also, I think, comes from outside of you too, whether it's other things you hear or just from something more ethereal, something more otherworldly, whatever. That if you show up or you listen, you quiet your mind enough, or, you're going to hear those messages again. And I always thought with the poetry book that I'd do one poetry book and that's it. And then I got into that practice of it, just like working out. If you show up and you say, okay, I'm going to write some stuff each day, or I'm going to write this little bit, that stuff adds up over time, and you get better at either picking it out of what you think or hearing it from wherever else it's coming from. And if you just show up every day, and if you get used to writing 10 poems a month, 10 quotes a month, because a quote basically it's free verse poetry. I'm going to throw it in with that
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't go away, wherever it comes from, it's still there. All you have to do is just be open to it again. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there were times after those books where I'm like, okay, that's it. Third poetry book's out. I'm done with poetry for this year. I'm going to concentrate on something else. And then I still find myself writing it, because the way I think about it or explain it is I've shown up so often to that place where it comes from, that how I visualize it, that area between worlds, and it recognizes when I'm not there. This may sound a little crazy. It recognizes
No.
when I'm not there. So then it's like, well, they didn't show up. So I'm going to just tell them what I'm thinking, because, it's that exchange of ideas with this ethereal place. So you can't turn it off, and it's always there. All you have to do is go, well, let me just see what's going on over here, and think about it for a little while, and it shows up. So I'd say for your quotes, if you want to get to 7 books, they're there. If you want to go
Yeah.
beyond that, it's there. If you want to not write it down, I think that is the hard part now for me, is the not writing it down, because you'll hear something and you're like, okay, I'll write it down. And you end up with 20 pages of notes in your phone when you look at it
Mm-hmm.
one day and you're like, this is overwhelming. I don't know how I'm ever going to get this to anything. But I found that if you put a date and a time with it, and sometimes you'll get a couple lines, and sometimes you'll have a whole poem, sometimes it'll just be a line for maybe another book or whatever. And you just write that down and do the date and time. And you could go back through that on a timeline and remember so much more of it than you would if you didn't write any of it down. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
remember the feeling where you were. And that's why I think it's coming from somewhere else. Like it's there for you to get whenever you need it. It's right there. So
I agree. I agree with you 100% on that. Because I can't say like, because even like when I was doing the talk show daily, I know that it wasn't 100% me, but I was a vessel willing to be used. And whatever point needed to get across to whomever was hearing or watching the replay, then I didn't mind being a vessel because it was going to be effective. There's so many people that we can positively affect if we just be open. And I'm just proud that I came to the point in life where I want to be open and allow, God, my maker, creator, whoever, whatever people consider it to be. I'm not here to argue about that, but you know what I mean? Whatever you consider it to
mhm.
be, I was available, am available, not was, I am available. And I want to make sure, and I learned too. It's like a learning process for me too. So, like I was saying, like words will fall out of my mouth, and while it's falling out of my mouth, I'm like, "Oh, that was good,"
Mm.
and I'm just like, I didn't even know. So I understand what you're saying. We have to just come to a point in life where we're just like, okay, I'm letting go of ego and realizing that there's something more powerful than me that decided that I was capable enough to handle that kind of opportunity. So
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing. It's an honor.
Yeah. Being the antenna or the conduit or whatever. Yeah. I think it's all that stuff mixed together. It's That's why I think that if anybody wanted to write, they could.
Mhm.
Just how open are you to it? And it does take practice. I'm sure there's people that are just naturals at it, but it does take practice, and you just have to show up and write things down and think about it. There's Stephen King in his book on writing said that something like a notebook or notes is a great way to memorialize bad ideas. And you can't argue with Stephen King's success, but I think I would
Hmm.
argue with the point of memorializing bad ideas that I don't think that's the case. I mean, sometimes you'll write stuff down and go, well, I don't know what that means. I may never use it again, and that's okay. But you got to do you got to do it all to capture it all.
Hmm.
So
And what is it
when,
really a bad idea? Like you'll never really know. You know what I'm saying? It could be useful for another time.
yeah, and then the idea, I think what you were saying is that you never know who that's going to inspire, and maybe that's something else working through you to get to that person. Like
Hmm.
you might have a quote that you wrote on a cup somewhere, and then you forget the cup, and then somebody sees that after you're gone, or they find it in the trash, or find it on the table, or wherever. And you could even go stages beyond that, where somebody reads that and then they tell somebody else about it. So it is amazing when you think about how much each of us affects what other
Hmm.
people feel or go through. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I
no.
agree. I agree. Like one of my books, people always gravitate to at when I go to pop-ups, and the reactions that are, I'm just like, wow, imagine if I never got my hair done at that time. Imagine if I wasn't listening. Imagine if I wasn't that type of person who felt like everything that was said to me could be a potential challenge. Imagine if I didn't take up that call. Like I would not be an author. So I'm just, everything happens for a reason. You're present, but are you really present?
Hmm.
You know?
What's your, when you sit down to write, what's your setup for that? Like, do you set aside a certain time in the day? Do you schedule it? How do
Nope.
you start it?
I don't
It
schedule
just happens
anything.
when it happens.
It just happens. Like I said, like now there aren't, like maybe once or twice in a month a quote will come and I'll just write it down. Sometimes I'm lazy. I'm like, I don't feel like writing it down. I remember. And of course I know I don't remember, but
Yeah.
there is nothing systematic about me. Like I am not your traditional writer. I'm not a traditional poet. I'm just like, listen, I'm just gonna put it down, and if people get it, they get it. Luckily, they have been getting it, but I think I might be one of the exceptions to the rule, where it's just like I don't sit down and just say like, okay, let me write something. It just all comes, and I'm like, oh, wait, that's good. That's a good thing. I'm gonna write it down. And I guess maybe because I don't have the desire to write anything like another book at this point in time, as you said before, I don't notice it maybe, or maybe I'm
Mhm.
just closed off to it for the time being. But if the fire comes underneath me again, like, okay, let's pick up number 6, then, at that time, maybe more quotes will come and flow as freely as they did. Because, the method, but I don't know. It's just at this point in my life, there's so much going on. I don't know if I have any energy left to write
Yeah.
something down because it does take time to write things down. But I don't dedicate any part of the time, day or week or whatever, to do that. But once I'm putting the book together, transferring it from one place to the next, that's when I sit down. And then I'm like, it's like a second chance because now I'm reading it again. And I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? And then I'm like, okay, I have a conversation with myself. Like, what does it mean to me? It's like an
Mm.
open-ended thing. It's for the reader. I guess it's like artwork. It's for the viewer to see what they come out of it, what they interpret the meaning to be. So maybe that's more of it than a poet. Maybe it's just art in written form.
Yeah. Yeah. That's poetry. That's poetry, Joy. The it's I would say keep writing it when it occurs to you, because I think that it gets louder and louder, and that's how you know that it's gotta, if it's a story in your head, it's got to come out eventually. So it's just tumbling and tumbling and working itself up. And that is a little more difficult to get out than a poetry, a couple lines of poetry or a quote or something, because I, think those are different, but having written books and having written poetry, I think maybe people would look at poetry and say it's easier. And I think that's right to a point, because writing a novel takes a lot more sitting
Oh,
down,
yeah.
doing this, doing this, doing this, and then refining,
It's more
refining, refining.
structured. Yeah,
Yeah,
structured. I don't like structure. That's not
it's a
me.
lot more chipping
I'm
away.
tired of
But
school. Yeah, I'm not.
yeah,
I'm tired of school.
but you keep writing the quotes down, or just those things that occur to you. And even if you're thinking you're closed off to it now, I think you'll go back and you'll have those notes in your phone, or your notes where you wrote them down somewhere else. And if you write them down somewhere and you got to get them in your phone, but you don't want to type them, just take a picture of them. And then you go
True.
back through those pictures one day, maybe. And
No, you're right.
the way I do it is, when I get overwhelmed with so much information that's in those notes, I print it out and then I cut the paper into the lines. So I just have, like, it looks like kind of like a fortune cookie message, except it's
Oh, that's
whatever the quote
cool.
is. And then you can put those however you best organize it. Like if you have a little basket or something, you can say, these are quotes about whatever. These are quotes about whatever.
That's
These
cool.
are lines from characters that maybe I have this story in my head going on. I'll put them over there. And then when you get a chance later and that mood hits you, you don't have to sit down for hours. You just go, well, let me look at a few of these. And you just put them out, and you can rearrange the order so easy. And maybe it turns into something a little longer than just a quote. Maybe it is a poem. Maybe all those quotes together or something. Or maybe they're just quotes and they're individual. But
Yeah, no, that's
I
cool. I
find,
like that.
yeah,
I
that's a way
like
to
that idea
organize it.
too.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, it's worked for me a bunch of times. And then if I have them into whatever subcategory, I'll tape them to a larger piece of paper. And then I can go, okay, now this, when I'm ready to start on this, I've got it right here. And you can move them around too.
Yeah,
You
I
can
like
add
that.
to it. You can take away from it. It's, it's a good way I found to straighten out the jumble of things going on in your mind, because you got so much going on.
I
When
like
you,
that. I really like
when,
that
when
because
you
there's so
write your
much you could
book,
do with that.
yeah, you just little idea box everywhere, and you just put your ideas in there. The When you write your book,
Yeah, and I
what
mean, like you
program do
said,
you
like a
use?
fortune cookie, you could.
Yeah.
Um, so I have a Mac, so I use Pages,
Mm,
and then I
okay.
upload it. I put it in Pages, I upload it to the copyright office, and then I go ahead and, put it in the format for Amazon.
All right. You're the second person I've talked to in my life that uses Pages. So, wow, there's two people.
It's it's cool because it converts to Word. If
Hmm.
you wanted it to convert to Word, you can convert. I love Mac for that reason. You can convert any
Hmm.
program to Microsoft Excel, anything. So, but you
Yeah.
can't convert it to a Mac. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Nice. So then, when you started doing the quotes, what came first, the quotes or the idea of putting the quotes on clothing?
Oh, the quotes came first. You can thank Instagram for that. Because I was just that's when it all started flowing. So I would put the quote in my phone into like, like a little picture, then
Hmm.
post it on Instagram. And I never thought twice about it. I didn't think it was that valuable. But then it became valuable when I got that challenge in my head.
Hmm.
Um, and then like I kind of wanted to fall back on posting it on Instagram before did the copyright for it because I wanted to protect my work. I started seeing the quotes like reposted on other pages, and it's not like paid people pages. It was those meme pages, and I said, let me slow down on writing that, and so I just kind of put them all. I made sure I protected the work, and then I didn't mind where it went because I
Okay.
knew and I wanted to make sure that it was truly all mine. So I did the work.
Did Were t-shirts the first things you started printing, or was it
Yes.
just t-shirts? And what
It
was
was
your
t-shirt.
medium for that? Were you doing silk screen or iron on or photo transfer?
So
What kind of stuff?
when I first started, it was just an idea. I did not realize you could do it yourself. But then I ran into someone who, around the corner from where I used to live, they had a store, and they became my mentor and said, "Why don't you just do it yourself?" And I'm like, "No." And then I said, "You know what? You're right." I bought the heat press. Then, doing research, I found the transfers, and I used a third party company to print the transfers. So years and years and years of doing that. And then last year I purchased my own. Well, I didn't. Be the Difference Clothing purchased its own machine so that it could actually print the transfers, and then I could do it to t-shirts. So like now everything is one streamline. Be the Difference
Nice.
Clothing can print. Yeah, it can print for the company and anyone else. Then we have, as you can see back here, the inventory. If you can
Mm.
see it, I'm in the way. But there's an inventory of
Oh, okay.
items. Yeah, so I have onesies, then I have t-shirts, um, then my copyright is back there too. Then on this back wall, there's more stock over here. Then I have a couple heat presses, and then the other equipment is in another location where I could just print and go on. So it's like a print demand company as well. And
Okay.
I was so against it at first because I was like, you know what, this is supposed to be a brand that stands alone. But I now see it as an opportunity to engage with other people. And the opportunity is amazing because when people come with custom designs, I have conversations with them, and maybe they'll come back again. But at the end of the day, it's that interaction and what my presence meant to them that could carry them throughout the rest of their day or their life, whatever. You know what I mean? So now I see it as an opportunity to engage with people and make maybe potentially help somebody have a better life. So I'm
Nice.
thankful for it.
Had you done any screen printing or anything before this, or is this your first experience when you started doing this?
It is the first experience. And I feel like screen printing doesn't last as long. So I never had the desire to do it. At least that's what my mentor was telling me.
Mm.
So I was just like, I didn't have any desire, but I do the heat press. And when, like, this sweatshirt that you see here, this is about 3 years old or more. And
Okay.
it's still very good.
Yeah.
Um, And so the method of printing that I learned how to use, you get a quality product and it lasts for a little while. And I haven't had any issues or anybody, come back to me complaining about anything that I've printed. So, I'm glad that I'm glad that the control is in the company's hand and how we can make sure products are quality.
Mhm. Do you have in-house now the ability to make the design and put it on the shirt? So you're doing all of that now?
I can, like, again, like I was too nervous about actually designing stuff, just for myself. Like, I'll show you this design. Um, I actually made this design,
Okay. Very nice.
and the response that people have, I put the little Be the Difference on there.
Mhm. Nice.
But the response that people have had for this design is like, "Why were you so afraid?" You know? Why did you think that and people were saying that I could do it. I'm like, I don't know how. I'm always thinking that you have to be qualified to
Mm.
be, you have to go to school to be qualified, which in some cases it is preferred and it is helpful to have the strategic way of doing things, but it doesn't mean that if you're not qualified by, you know, written qualifications, it doesn't mean that you can't. So I take something simple and I make something out of it. Anybody can do that. And now I'm a little bit more confident, so people are liking the different designs that I make. I'm not saying that I could do intricate designs, But anything simple, if they give me a idea, we'll work on it together. As long as they're okay with what comes out of it, then we move forward. If not, then, chuck it and maybe have somebody else design it for you. But, you know, you just got
Yeah, some years ago when I was in the Marines, we had the Sophie t-shirts, and they were made in, I think, South Carolina. So they were American made shirts. I think the cotton probably came from the US as well. Most stuff, if you get it in the military, it has to be made by the US, has to be US made. And we were doing shirts for our unit, and I remember growing up, my dad doing silk screening for like the elementary school or the high school when we were having homecoming, and they would make t-shirts. And I remember when we were growing up, you got the wood stove going in the winter because it's probably around that time, October time frame for homecoming. And all of the silk screen things are out. He's silk screening, and then they're just hanging up around the kitchen. And you can still remember the smell of that, but I thought, wow, that's pretty cool that you can put your own design that you make on some clothes, and just the expression from that, and then the freedom of not having to wear what some other company said this is what you should wear, but you have some input into it. So we made shirts for our Marine unit, and I had them printed at a place that was local in Virginia Beach, Norfolk area. And just the having your custom shirt was cool because you got to pick the t-shirt you liked. You didn't have to have a different type of material that you're like, I like what's on the shirt, but I just don't like what the shirt's made out of, or the cut of the shirt, or whatever. You find the perfect fit, perfect feel shirt, put your message that you want on it. And some years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I started thinking, why am I wearing shirts and clothes that advertise other businesses that I may or may not agree with? That why don't I get something that has a message that I want instead of
Mhm.
like just some random thing that you can get? And I made a design that was all of the logos for the military, each military branch. And it said, land of the free because of the brave. And
Mm,
I started having those printed, and I print like 20 or 30 at a time because it's just to make it worth the amount when you go and you get pay the setup cost for the art, and then they do the print run. That every 4 or 5 years I get some more made, just because I'd either give them to people or I would wear them out because that's all I would wear. You
mhm.
pick something that has a message that you like, that you feel like you support, and then a shirt that's comfortable for you. How much of that type of thought went into you printing your own messages of just
All of it. All of it.
okay.
There's a design, like my second design is called Addiction Kills the Family. And, when it was first printed, because I didn't print, I was still going through outsourced third party companies to print it. But when I got it, I was just nervous about wearing it because it's such a powerful message. But the reactions that were coming from that message made me even more confident and proud to wear it. You know, um, you don't know what people are thinking and how it can affect them.
Mm.
I remember it being in the grocery store. It's, of course, it's summertime because I have my t-shirt on. I'm at the register and, I walked by customer service going to the register. And she just looked at me really strange. And I'm like, why is she looking at me like that? Then, of course, I look down. I'm like, oh, it's the t-shirt. So who knows? Maybe it was something personal. Maybe it's someone in her family. Maybe it was her coworker. Maybe it's her. And it doesn't mean it's just substance abuse. That's the reason why I left it that way. It's just like a big bear claw just ripping the whole family apart. It was a very
Yeah.
graphic design, but I want it to be a conversation that people start having. I believe our world become our world is becoming more free and more healed and WHOLE because we are releasing our traumas, because we are becoming open, because we're allowing ourselves to actually communicate and be heard and want people to understand how we need to be loved. So those are the conversations that I like to have so that we all can be WHOLE or close to it as possible. Like,
Mm.
imagine when our world is more communicative. There's not too many arguments you can have when you can sit down and let someone else talk. You may not agree with what they have to say, but at least you understand where they're coming from and maybe can think differently. So
Yeah,
that
finding that common
message
ground.
is like, yeah, it's those messages like that are what go on the shirts. There's another one, a paycheck is not a passion. That opened up a lot of different conversations. Some people get
Mm.
what I'm thinking, others, think of it in a different way, but it's very intriguing to know what people are thinking.
Do you worry ever that your like the slogans you pick or the quotes you pick to put on your clothing would limit your customer base? I guess
No,
that sounds a
I
little
would
impersonal.
say I would say the people who actually supported the Addiction Kills the Family shirt the most were people who were in recovery.
Mm,
I never understood it, why they would, but when it was explained to me, it's like, it's just saying you've overcome and you are overcoming, and it makes them happy. So I at first I thought I was very like I said, I was very nervous and afraid because that is a big thing. And the first thing people are gonna think of is drugs. So I was very nervous. But once I understood that they saw it in a positive light, most people saw it in a positive light who responded. And I'm like, okay, then this is good. I'm gonna keep going with it, you know? So no, I honestly it's not my place to wonder what people are thinking. I just do what I'm supposed to do or feel like I do what I feel like I'm supposed to do and then just keep moving, you know?
yeah, I think one of the reasons that I was thinking about printing my own shirts or having them printed was when you think about other companies and you're like, well, do I want to support what they're supporting, or is there a way I can not by not trying to boycott them, but more of how can I support companies that I agree with rather than not. I wasn't looking at it from the frame of I want to not support them because I don't agree with them. I'm thinking of it of I want to help these other companies because I want to support them. So when I think about things that are made in America, American clothing companies, I try to buy that stuff first. I still have things that aren't made in the US, but I try as much as I can to buy US made things or things that even if it's a company that's not a US company, some of the things are made in the US or at least they're employing US citizens. So
I agree with that.
I, I like the idea of the homegrown companies. So and
Yeah,
then if
man,
you have a message,
this is
yeah,
grassroots from 2013. And, I'm not Be the Difference Clothing nowhere near as a traditional clothing company brand. Like, it's not in that like, we do everything by law, but like, okay, this quarter we're gonna be making $100,000. Like
mm,
that would be great. But the point is to touch people's lives, to be
mm,
effective, not popular. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather be, even in my own personal life, I would rather be effective than popular. What's a popular person who has no impact?
mm.
So,
How many people work at Be the Difference Clothing?
uh, right now there are two people, which is myself, and when I go to pop-ups, I have a helper, and then I also have a marketing person, a marketing agency that I use, um, and who else? That's pretty. That right there is the core right there. Um, So right now we're very, very small.
Where do you get your clothing that you print on? Like
So I go through US companies, but again, like like you were mentioning, the materials probably are not made in the US. But I do go through US based companies for the actual blank shirts. And as far as the film and everything like that, I never did deep research on where they get it from, like where it's sourced out of before they get the material. But I do use a US, they're in California where I order, the material to get this film and stuff like that,
okay.
and the ink and all that. So, you know,
What's your favorite makeup of a t-shirt or clothing to work on, like the blend of material?
I like the mix, the poly cotton. I feel it's more durable. It lasts longer, it has some stretch to it. It's every day. Um, I'm actually trying to move into other brands as well. More polyester. But a lot of people who do purchase t-shirts at pop-ups, they don't want that,
Mm.
closed up,
Oh,
that
okay.
loose feeling. So,
The athletic fit.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So like the brands that the blend that I use is the popular one for the clientele that I have now. And there's some people who do like the other quality of the more stretchy material. So I'll like order that for them. But for most part, right now, trying to switch over to something a little bit more fitted is a big no-no.
Mm,
But I
okay.
have it.
Yeah, you got to know the market. That makes sense.
Mhm.
The the shirts I like that once I found, I was like, I can't go back to a regular 50-50, like a 50 cotton and poly. Those are okay. Like the Anvil brand, I think is a popular one, but
Mhm.
Sophie makes those 100% cotton shirts, which are good under your military on your BDUs, but they don't last a long time. They're not a heavy weight shirt, although they have some different weights. But I used to those were my favorite, and then I found the tri blend shirts, which are
Mhm.
cotton poly rayon or something, and
Yeah,
they're
those are nice
more
too.
yeah, they're more of the fitted shirt. And then I got older and I was like, man, I need to start wearing a collared shirt just because I feel like that's what I need to do now. But the the tri-blend shirts, I think Next Level makes them,
Mhm.
and those are the ones I use when I do I think the 60-10 or something like that is what I get off of
I use
Amazon.
I use
I don't think they're made in the US.
I used the tri-blend ones before. I have, but I personally didn't like that. I don't know. I like solid colors,
Mm,
So I
the
do
heather
have,
colors. Yeah.
yeah, I do. I love Next Level. I do love their quality. I love Bella. I love all of them, but I stick to, and each one of those brands make that particular blend that I use. Um, But to me, it's just as long as it's a nice solid color and it adheres to the it adheres
Oh yeah.
to the print really well, then I stick with that. I just like the other day, I got some Bella, like me trying to switch to a different kind of blend. I got the Bellas, and when I printed on it, it kind of bled, and I was like, "Ooh,
Uh,
I don't really want to."
yeah.
It kinda burned bled, and I was like, "Ah!" I kinda stay away from it a little bit more now, but I'm like or, then I'll just back off a little bit on the heat. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I was just like, I what I use, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, it's you got to know the market. That's one of the things where I used to buy like jump box fitness shirts for working out, and they were a tri blend, and then they started changing them sometime to a different material, and then I was like, oh, I can't buy these anymore because I got used to the others. But yeah, you got to figure what works and then keep going with it. When
Mhm.
you develop your process for new items, how do you have like a test market for it, or do you have people you talk to about what they would want, or is it things that you think I use these, so maybe other people will use them too?
Now I use more of a test market. Like I have different fashionista type people, right? So like I don't have the other one up here, but I just made a design, I am Black History, and I made two different ones. So I kind of asked around which they liked, and the groups of people were split down the middle. So I said, you know
Mm,
what? I actually can do the distribution, so it doesn't matter. I can print it on a couple shirts and see how it goes.
mm,
And so far, people like, there's no one that doesn't like it more than the other. You know what I mean? They like the caps a
mm.
little bit more, but as far as choosing which print design they like the best, I haven't had it out there long enough to see which one stands the test of time more. But you just put it out there, you know? That's just
Yeah,
how I am.
maybe you do it where you say this is the loose fit and then this is athletic fit, and get to the point where you can offer the tri blend and then a 50-50 and then 100%. And then I wonder if that's a better way to get a view of what people like. I don't know,
It would
business
be if
wise.
I was in a standalone, if I was in a brick and mortar, then I think that
Yeah.
would be great. But there's so many different pop-ups that I go to in so many different communities. So
Right.
what sold really well last week, nobody's touching at this next location. And it's hard to figure out why, because not often do I go back to these same places, because it's like one thing could be a yearly thing, one thing could be a monthly thing. Um, you just never know. But I find that once I limit the amount of things that I offer, a lot more things get sold.
Mm.
So this evening, I'm going to be going to an event. I'm only going to carry 4 shirts and see how that goes. Because, like, I carry 7 colors of each shirt. So imagine if I carried the whole stock. People will be looking like, oh my goodness, it's probably so confusing to people because they're like, oh, I like that, I like that, I like that, but I don't know what I want, so I'm just gonna leave. So now
Right.
I just put it where there's 3 different designs that are on the table. Which one appeals to you more?
Yeah, it does seem like that different color clothing and design have their cycles they go through, to where like the things that I grew up with in the late 70s, early 80s are kind of coming back around.
Hmm.
And you get those, like the cut of those shorts that we had back in the 80s that kind of come up on the side a little. And you're like, man, I wasn't, I wasn't excited about those back in the day. And now it seems like it's the fashion. So you're like, oh, okay. But it, it is weird how it seems like they go around in cycles, and you just got to wait until it comes back around, wide collars, thin collars, wide collars, same with ties. But hmm,
Yeah, and then remember, like 2 years ago, tie dye was everything. Nobody's buying tie dye again now. So
yeah, seems like camouflage is the
it's
thing
just
that's
like
in now.
you gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I got a lot of camouflage caps. So, people like that, people are gravitating to that. I actually just picked the camouflage because one, I thought people would like it, but two, I'm like, ooh, that's a different like blend of camouflage. So I like
Mm.
that. Like I got a nice hunter green one, and then there was one with white and black specks in it. I was like, ooh, I like that too. So, I just try not to give too much, but I have the basic one that, people know of, and then I introduce a different kind of color. And they're like, oh, I
Yeah.
like that. And again, it's not like it's in a brick and mortar where people are going to it and saying, like, okay, this week I want this one because I have the other one already. They're not 100% familiar with the brand yet. We're still growing. Even though we've been doing this for so many years, we're still growing.
Do you do online sales? How's that compare to your pop-up sales percentage wise?
The online, that's why I have my marketing team now. The online sales, they're starting to get a little better because you cannot do it all. I don't know that deeply into marketing, the right keywords, the right SEO. It's just a lot for me to grasp. So I just let the marketing team do that. And because they are doing it so well, I'm getting more contacts through Google. I'm getting more, contacts and hits on the website. So now I'm just wanting them to fully convert, you know? So it's just I have to that's a good question I need to ask. Why and what is the point where they're stopping at and where the conversion stops or the potential conversion stops. So that's a conversation I'm gonna have with my marketing team.
Yeah. Have you looked at shows like Shark Tank and things like that to get ideas on how to form your business, or how did you decide the structure of your business, whether you're going to be an LLC or another type? How did you figure all that out?
Shark Tank wasn't available when we started. Um, SBA had just started, I believe, pretty much. That was becoming a thing. Um, I already had to do the research on how to incorporate, and because I used to manage a Christian rapper, and I always believe you need to protect yourself. You need to protect your commodities. So I made sure I figured out how to incorporate, and I figured out how to copyright his music. And that's why it was so easy for me to transition when I started doing Be the Difference clothing, because I already did it. But I did what I had to do as a manager to make sure that stuff was protected. And most of it was Google. And because I had a business background, I went to college for business. These are things that they taught you there. So I already knew. And all you have to do now is just apply it and then reapply it, then reapply it and reapply it. The only thing I did not learn in college was how to incorporate. I mean, no, how to trademark and how to copyright. Those are the two things I didn't know how to do. But I learned it, and then here we are.
Yeah. What are your
So
plans for the
I
future?
just chose
What
for
are your
the
plans for the
future,
future?
Be the Difference clothing, um, you know, getting more podcasts, national television recognition, just being able to touch more people's lives in a positive way, to continue that effort. That will never stop. Definitely, you know, being able to have more things. I think this year I want to be able to open up the embroidery side of the company. And then after that, will be a fully fledged distribution. Um, so those are the main things that I want this company to do more of. More public speaking, doing workshops with kids, with students, from elementary to high academia. Also just doing vision boards. I love doing vision boards. I love teaching people how to do vision boards. Anything humanitarian, um, that's where I want Be the Difference Clothing to have a foot in. So that is the future for Be the Difference Clothing. As far as sales go, absolutely, we need to, hit certain marks this year. Definitely want to do that, but never lose sight of humanity. So whatever that case may be. And I'm also going to want to be willing to be open so that I could be a vessel for others to see.
Nice. With your Hello World talk show, are you still doing that?
I killed myself. Well, really, but I burnt myself out for doing that. Let me tell you what happened. Right? So
All right.
I was over there on YouTube to get monetized. With the monetization, you have to reach a certain hours. And they said at that time to be monetized, you have to go live. And that's how Hello World was birthed.
Huh.
You know, there was no plan, no anything. I didn't even know, but I just knew as a talk show, we were supposed to have a topic and maybe some guests. And when the guests weren't coming, then I started talking. And I started talking, the conversation didn't match topic. So I stopped putting topics until after the talk show. And so, that's pretty how it is, how it was. So my goal was to hit 1,000 episodes. And I did it in 3 years because I went
Mhm.
live 7 days a week. And after doing it for 3 years straight, I kind of think anybody would be burned out. And it's not like we were like little 15-minute segments. We were talking like some of these segments were like an hour of me just sitting there, like, talking and just being filled. Like it was a lot.
Yeah. What equipment did you use to start that with?
I used my Mac and then I got my lights and I used the sound from my Mac. Um, I never did go and I did actually try to get the little camera to have a better quality camera. I tried that, but the angle wasn't right. I didn't like the way it was contrasting on me, so I just stuck with my light and my laptop. I have equipment, but I just don't like using it. I don't know. I guess I like what I like.
Mm.
I do have the mics now. I don't use it today, but I do have my mic, my little lapel mic that I love. And then you know what else I like to do now as well? I keep that on deck. Um, Everywhere I go now, I'll find one or two people who I think might want to talk about what they do to be the difference. So I have my little lapel mic and it's beautiful because it doesn't pick up the background noise as much.
Mhm.
And they speak 20, 30 seconds as to you may have seen that, as to what they do to make a difference. And I put that on Instagram. So I enjoy doing that um, for the company. I think that's a nice little added addition. And
Yeah.
it's just like an everyday person gets to talk about that and people can relate. So I like that.
Yeah, I've seen those on Instagram. When you were doing guests, how did you find guests?
So interestingly enough, some guests I found from, the pop-ups. Others I knew. Then who else was oh yes, 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 yes. There was one author that I had met. She was a children's author and I interviewed her. Um, I've interviewed a lot of different people. I've even had pop-up shops my on Hello World. And one of the most intriguing things that we did a we did a talk show where we all made a song together. I was supposed to get it produced and everything, but it never got that far. But it was like we did like a songwriting talk show. I thought that was cool. Oh, and then I
Yeah,
did an all singing talk show too. It's just, whatever came to mind, we just did. But
nice. So,
I've had an
so
array of guests. I enjoyed every single one of them.
okay. So then the future of the Hello World is on Instagram with like customer engagement for Be the Difference Clothing then?
No, that's not Hello World. Hello World is strictly on YouTube for the most part. That's the more structured thing. These are just daily testimonials, or not daily, but these are just day testimonials from everyday people. Hello World, every so often I'll get the strength to do it. But it takes a lot. I feel like it takes a lot to
Yeah.
do Hello Worlds. And if I didn't do 1,000 episodes, maybe I might want to. And it's more than 1,000. Like right now I'm at like 1,050, but
Yeah.
or more. I don't know, but I don't keep track of it. There's no goal. That's the problem. Like I don't have a goal right now. It's not, if I wanted to do 2,000 episodes, then maybe I might get back on track and do it 7 days a week. I am the type of person that if I don't do it and if I don't make sure I, stay focused on that, then I'm just not going to. It's going to be fun for a minute and that's it. But once I make my mind up to do something, it's going to get done. And once I do it, it's like, okay, what's next? You know?
What's taking up most of your time these days then?
So doing custom printing, pop-ups. I go live on TikTok, but it's more so to showcase the company. Um, so right now, my priority now is to do more custom orders and to, like I said, boost up those sales for the company. So that's my primary objective right now. Um, so yeah, I'm tied up, focused on that. Not tied up. I'm just focused more strictly on that. All of the social parts of, having the talk show and everything is cool, but that's not the priority right now.
Hmm. What's the best way for people to find you and follow you on the clothing brand or on your social media?
So every platform you can think of, you can go to B as in boy, T as in Tom, D as in dog, LLC. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you name it. If there's a platform, I'm sure we're on it. Or you can Google. If you've ever actually made any purchases through the company, write a review so other people can see that you have quality products. We do, and I failed to mention this on, podcasts, that 10% of all the clothing designs goes to Hayden's Heart. It is a charity that raises awareness for babies with congenital heart disease. I love doing that. That actually motivates me to sell even more because of that. If you would like to purchase anything, you can go be thedifferencellc.com. And that's the website.
All right. And for the show notes, I'll have that link in there. And then I think I have your Instagram, Facebook, and a YouTube channel link as well. So people can find that. Thank you very much for all your time and talking today. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't?
No, I just want to say I appreciate you for allowing me to talk and to talk a little bit more in depth about, my writing processes and also giving me ideas on how I can, not always throw things away, but just to save it for another day. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Um, I definitely appreciated the conversation, and I do hope that whoever, watches what we talked about today, they find encouragement. Just know that you are all beautiful and amazing, and there's no mistake about you. So never give up and don't quit. Um, just consider your life and the purpose that you were equipped with. And if you don't know what that is, then just find time to quiet yourself and open yourself to God, your maker, creator, or whoever you believe in. Whatever you can't see, that's going to go in that inside that heart and that soul, clean it up so that you can become more WHOLE. So
Very
don't give
nice.
up.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll talk to you on the other side of this. Okay.